it's Phil. Welcome back to the show. I am here with Christian Taylor.
Hey, Phil.
Who's pretty in fuchsia.
Pink.
Fuchsia.
It is Valentine's week.
It can't be pretty in fuchsia. It has to be like funny in fuchsia.
Who's
I like that.
Fabulous in fuchsia.
Fabulous
I like
in
that too.
fuchsia. And Skye Jethani.
Hello.
Who is lethargic
Actually,
and
this
light
is
gray.
blue. This
It's
is
very
blue.
light blue.
Very light blue.
We're blue and pink.
What's the name of
Boy
very
and
light
girl.
blue? Because you got robin's egg blue, you got sky blue, you got pale.
Clearly, it's sky blue.
Sky blue. Oh, that would be awesome if it was, but it's not. It's
That's true,
pale
it's not.
blue. It's barely blue.
Barely blue.
Barely blue.
You know, I think it's
my
funny
new
that
blues album.
you announce what color we're wearing every week
Yeah.
for people who are just listening and probably don't care what we're wearing.
Yeah, I know.
But you know
But
what?
they-
You
you
are so
gotta-
color driven, you know?
You got to paint a picture. You have to paint a picture. It's just like when you're listening to football on the radio and they say the Bears are wearing their standard white with black.
I have never heard that.
First of all, the
They
Bears
paint the
are
picture.
dark
And they're
blue.
blue
They're
and
dark
orange.
blue.
Their home uniforms.
Their home uniforms are
Navy,
Why?
dark
navy blue. It's
Well,
not
that's
black.
their away uniforms.
No, that's
No.
white. Whatever. Let's roll here.
Aren't you supposed to sing a song?
Hey, it's a podcast. What do you know? Hey, it's a podcast. And we got video. Hey, it's a podcast. Lend an ear. The Phil Vischer podcast starts right here. We'll talk to Skye.
Hi, Phil.
Hi, Barely Blue. And Christian, too.
Hi, Phil.
Fabulous and fuchsia. And we've got a guest. It's my dog here for you.
Hi,
But
buddy.
he's probably not going to be on the camera. He's sitting under my chair at the moment. Hey, it's a podcast. So lend an ear. The Phil Vischer podcast starts right here. The Phil Vischer podcast starts right here.
Now, why is Buddy with us today?
Buddy's here because I'm a bachelor.
You're a
I'm a
bachelor.
bachelor.
You been kicked out?
My oldest is married and living in Minneapolis. My middle is in college, and my youngest is in Minneapolis with my wife, who's up there with her in Minneapolis right now. So I'm
Visiting relatives.
a bachelor, and Buddy didn't want to sit home all day alone because that makes him want to pee in the wrong places.
Oh, that would not be good.
He gets mischievous.
He learned that from you, I'm guessing.
No, but he
one.
learned how to dig through the garbage from me when I'm feeling mischievous. So we have a little Super Bowl follow up.
Oh, is it a little controversy?
We have a little Super Bowl follow up. Not major controversy. It's stuff that we could have covered last week, but we had enough to cover already, so we didn't. But this is interesting. Katy Perry claims God spoke and encouraged her before Super Bowl performance that Ken Ham called sensuous and evil.
Uh-oh.
Interesting.
Could God have spoken to both of them?
He didn't say that God told him it was sensuous and evil. I think he was saying that's his own opinion.
But I would assume he's invoking some kind of divine,
You think so?
not judgment's the wrong word, disapproval.
So this is interesting. This is intriguing. Katy Perry says, I over-prepared myself and did a lot of prayer and meditation. She told Ryan Seacrest at the Grammy Awards. So this just came out. This is why we couldn't cover it a week ago, because it just came out, because it was at the Grammy Awards. She says, it's funny, I was praying, and I got a word from God.
She's from a Pentecostal background, isn't she?
Evangelical Christian.
Yeah, but I think she's from Pentecostal
I don't
background
know.
of evangelicalism.
I don't know.
I think that's
I
the
don't know.
case.
I got a word from God, and he says, this is what God says. Do you know what God says to Katy?
You know, when I want to know what God says,
Do you,
I go to Katy Perry.
yeah. Do you know what God says to Katy Perry?
I have no idea.
He says, you got this, and I got you, before her performance.
I think that could be a song.
Well,
got
technically,
this.
that could very well be true.
I got you.
You got this, babe.
I got you, babe.
Oh, my
There
word.
you go.
And you got this, babe. And then I was on top of the lion, and a guy, you know the lion.
Yeah, the
This
big,
it's supposed to be a
gigantic
tiger,
lion.
isn't it?
No, the lyrics of the
Puppet.
song are about a tiger.
Then why wouldn't they put her
Because
on
she
a
has the eye
tiger?
of the tiger.
Exactly.
And then she wrote out on a lion.
I didn't get that.
confusing.
Yeah,
I was
because it had a
confused.
mane. It had a mane.
I found that.
I was on
odd.
top of the lion, and a random guy, just looked at me with a headset that I've never communicated with before, and he just looked me straight in the eyes, and he said, you got this.
Was it God?
Dum, dum, dum.
That's very interesting.
The only thing that would have made that better is if the guy with the headset was Morgan Freeman.
Oh, and he was wearing an all-white suit.
Yeah.
That would have been awesome. And I was like, oh, this is God confirming that I can do this. That God speaks through men with headsets, like air traffic control.
Well, a lot of pastors these days are using those headset mic kind of things.
That's true. I guess you've got a good point there, Skye, that we should
countryman
take into
Mike, as it's
consideration.
known.
Perry, who used to perform Christian music before moving away from her roots, quoted Psalm 118:24 before the halftime show. "Today is the day that the Lord has made. I will rejoice and be glad in it," she wrote to her almost 65 million Twitter followers.
Interesting.
She has 65 million Twitter.
That's a lot.
You know, if she wants to
don't
promote our
have that
podcast, that could help.
Yeah,
I don't think she will.
In a 2013 interview, Perry said that she no longer identifies with a specific religion, but still feels that she has a connection with God.
Like many of her generation.
What's Buddy doing back there?
He's rummaging behind the set.
I'm afraid the set's going to come crashing on us.
My dog.
Should we do something about that?
He's back there.
Buddy's causing chaos.
There he goes. He's going to step on the power strips and turn off the lights.
I'm worried he's going to pee on one of them.
This is going to be funny. Katy Perry says, "I'm not a Buddhist, I'm not a Hindu, I'm not a Christian, but I still feel like I have a deep connection with God. I pray all the time for self-control, for humility. There's a lot of gratitude in it. Just saying thank you sometimes is better than asking for things." Perry's father, Keith Hudson, is an evangelical minister in Orange County, California, and says he's proud of his daughter despite previously criticizing the messages in her music. Thank you, buddy. If you are not a Buddhist, a Hindu, a Christian, but still feel a deep connection with God, what is that?
That is a great,
What,
deep
That's called being
question.
spiritual, but not religious.
without you reject all doctrine?
Yeah, this is where the nuns come from, right? NONES.
Yeah, I don't want to affiliate.
Right. The growing demographic of young adults who say they are religious or they're spiritual, but they don't want to affiliate with any particular tradition or denomination.
But she's praying to a single deity.
Well, and
she's
she says it's God.
So there's
And apparently God speaks to her, so there's clear communication.
And wait,
going on.
let's see if she used male pronouns in referring to God.
Well, why does that matter?
Because I'm trying to narrow down what her doctrine is.
Okay.
Is God male? He's single? There's a single God.
She's probably not nailed down her own doctrine, I'm guessing, because she's still younger and.
Well, she's rejected. She inherited doctrine.
Yeah,
and
well, that's
now
what
she's rejected.
she's clearly been influenced by the Christianity in which she grew up. So the idea of a single God that you communicate with, that she refers to with a male pronoun, makes sense.
While riding a 16-foot lion, singing about kissing a girl.
Clearly the Lion of Judah.
Now, who's the guy that sang with her?
Lenny Kravitz.
Lenny
Lenny Kravitz, who is also a Christian.
Kravitz?
He's a Christian.
I had never heard that.
Yeah,
But his father was Jewish.
he appeared in the Holy Spirit movie that I was also in. He also
Wow.
did an appearance to
6
talk
degrees
about
of separation.
his Christian faith. So,
Did you see him when you did this?
no, he did it at his house, and then I was interviewed in Elgin. He
That's
was not in
interesting.
Elgin
What did
when
he
I was-
say?
How important the Holy Spirit was to him, basically. I don't know. It was a little vague because he had his sunglasses on. It's hard to really tell what someone says, what they believe when they're wearing sunglasses
It works for Bono.
inside at night. Yeah, but his are so light you can
That's
still
true.
see his eyes.
He's gone from the Zooropa days where they were dark, kind of lightened up.
And
over.
it's something about medical. There's a medical condition, he says, that he has to wear them.
It's called suffering from cool.
No, that's not true. You know, Jim McMahon has the same thing.
Yeah, he has the Bono.
But Jim McMahon has brain damage,
Jim
Well, that's
McMahon
not-
has Bono eyes. That's what it's called. Bono eyes.
like Betty Davis eyes.
Yeah, like Betty Davis eyes, but it's Bono eyes. So what do you do with pop stars that reject their faith but then try to retain their faith? And then tweet about it to
part of it-
65 million people.
Part of it, I think, for a pop star or anybody, is they just want to be so inclusive. They don't want to alienate anybody or offend
Yeah.
anybody. So when you say, hey, I believe in God and I'm spiritual, but I don't practice any particular faith, it makes everyone feel good about you. Because you don't want to say you're an atheist.
Right.
Because people are still
People don't like
squirmy about
atheists.
Yeah, they don't like atheists, but they don't want you to.
Atheists are less popular than Muslims in America.
That's true.
But you know what? I would wager that she is on a journey, you know, like the rest of us. And she's clearly not an atheist. She does have some sort of relationship here, and she's in the process of figuring that out, like a lot of people I know her age.
Do you think she has, kind of like Madonna, do you think she has vestigial Christianity, like the remnants of a little Christian limb But he is
like an
I mean, there
appendix?
really truly is no
breaking things.
question. He's going to destroy something.
But he is smelling
checking everything out.
in the studio.
We need a buddy cam.
We do need a buddy cam. That'd
Put
be
a
awesome.
GoPro on his
That's
head. Just watch him.
See where he goes.
No, but it's impossible to say.
Yeah,
Because we're not
right.
inside of her. We only see
know.
what she does, which
Yeah.
is very much in conflict at times with what she says. But again,
Right.
that's the confusion of, I think, that age and our culture. And
What she has going for her, which again represents what a lot of people do, is she has all the benefits of believing in God without any of the limitations.
you wrote about this in your book.
Right.
I may have, but so she can invoke
Is she
God.
over,
She can.
under, next to, or with God?
I don't know. I'd have to know her better.
Okay.
But
Can we make that a goal?
she's invoking all the benefits of knowing God and looking for the encouragement and the affirmation and the peace and serenity
Right.
and all that,
Right.
without feeling like there are any restrictions. So she can.
She wants a word from God without any commands.
Right. So, for
Just
example,
encourage- it's Oprah. Is it Oprah? It's just
Probably
hey,
of that vein.
Here's a psalm to make you feel better.
and it's all make sure you're nice and you're kind. But
Yeah.
as far as taking any clear views on right and wrong, good and bad, no, we're not going to go there because
Right.
that might
'Cause
make me
that's-
uncomfortable.
right.
Now, here's a question. This is
Yeah.
kind of confusing,
Okay.
but there are
for
a
it.
lot of young girls that follow her. Or
65 million.
Yeah, or follow her Twitter.
On Twitter.
And Phil.
Not that many.
I don't know. Follow Katy
But-
Perry.
But, they're going to just take her words at face value. The set truly may fall
It's
on
like we're
top of us.
haunted.
I think my dog is getting stuck behind the set.
I don't think anybody can actually
I don't
hear
think this
that
was
but
such
us.
a good idea.
This is awesome.
Okay,
Yes, 65 million followers following.
right. And so they are following what she says.
Yeah.
And they're also seeing what she does.
Yeah.
How does that, we talk about culture impacting, the younger generations. What kind of impact do you think that has on them?
I don't know. Obviously, I can't know. None of my kids are Katy Perry fans, but
But your wife is.
clearly, she. Yeah, never mind. I was thinking about that
Yeah,
that dancing shark. The left shark phenomenon.
Why is
the left
Amanda
shark.
clearly a Katy Perry fan? Am I missing
Because
something?
she's so clearly not.
Yeah, she's not at
So
all.
wouldn't be that I
That
thought
was
it was
sarcastic,
funny
clearly.
to
Got
say
it.
she was.
But they probably are
She
following.
liked the shark. Is that what you were saying?
I like the shark.
Yeah, the shark was funny. He's
Yeah.
a big hit.
The example she's setting is, oh, look, Katy Perry can be religious and yet be totally inclusive. I bet lots of young girls who are growing up in religious
So is that
communities.
good or bad? Because
There's
on the one hand,
there's a good piece of
good
it.
side
There's a
of
bad
it.
piece of it.
And also, it tends to go with, it's Beyonce reading the Bible on the bus. It's Madonna.
What?
Yeah, she reads the Bible on her tour bus.
Oh, on the tour bus. I'm like, when does
the
Beyonce
bus.
take
No,
the bus?
when she's when she's going to work at her diner at her waitress
Right.
job. It's Madonna leading her crew in prayer before they do a show.
Mm-hmm.
There's this remnants. No one wants to be an atheist. No one wants to actually let go.
I have a theory
of
about that.
faith.
What's that?
They just want to let go of doctrine.
You've heard the saying, there are no atheists in foxholes.
yes.
Right. Well, I think when you're dealing with athletes and performers, you're kind of in the same phenomenon.
You're in a foxhole?
You're in a foxhole of sorts because as a performer, when you go out there are so many things out of your
Right.
control.
You're putting your life on the line.
Exactly.
Every
There's
time you step
technology.
out.
There's all kinds of production going on that
Yeah.
are out of your control, and so there's this sense of what am I going to do to give myself a sense of peace
Yeah.
and serenity in a situation
I
beyond
need to
my
call
control.
in for favors.
Exactly. And same thing with an athlete.
Yeah.
You may play your best game ever on the field, and before
It
you know
also
it, they
may-
call the wrong play in the last minute of the game, and it's
Right. Or it may be your last game ever.
Right.
And you don't even know it.
So when you're in those high pressure moments, those foxhole moments, you don't want to believe there's no God. You are naturally inclined to believe there is
Yeah.
one, and you want to invoke His help for your blessing.
Yeah.
And I think she's just following that same line of thought.
Okay.
I think what you just said was interesting there.
What'd I
You
say?
said something about how they want spirituality or the relationship, but they're chucking the doctrine.
Right. They don't want doctrine because doctrine is hurtful.
It's confining.
It's confining. It's constraining.
Well, it causes us.
And today we associate it so much with morality police. You know,
Right.
with you're not supposed to do that. You're gay. You're whatever. You're bad.
Yeah, if you kiss a girl, you're not supposed to like it.
I know. It should be an accident.
Right.
Well, and truthfully, all that aside,
Yeah.
God talks about, if we're going to follow him and have that relationship with him, that has to be ultimate. That has to be the most important thing.
The relationship.
Right. And intimacy with him. And you got to turn against all this other stuff. Yeah. And so even as setting the morality piece aside, there is a hard call there that when you follow God,
you give up.
You give up a lot.
But, that's true of every relationship.
That's true.
Every relationship we have that has any kind of trust and intimacy has boundaries.
Yeah.
And there's an agreement at some point, whether it's explicit like in a marriage ceremony or implicit even in a friendship, that there are boundaries. Mm-hmm. That's what makes a relationship meaningful. So the idea that I want to have a relationship with God but have no boundaries is just ridiculous because it takes away any sort of intimacy or trust.
I think Shark on the right was showing us legalism and Shark on the left was showing us grace.
Wow.
It was
That's deep, Phil.
freewheeling it.
And I bet it was
trusting in his relationship with
Actually,
Katy Perry.
he's hoping for grace after what he did or what he didn't do.
So Shark on the right is an Old Testament shark. Shark on the left is a New Testament shark.
All right.
You with me?
I'm hearing you. I
Will
would
you
say
back
I'm with
me?
you.
Will you back me? Will you officially endorse that perspective?
No.
Skye Jethani agrees, stamp of approval?
No, I think if you were more accurate, the shark on the right should have been dancing better than or the left should have been dancing better than on the right.
I think he was dancing better, just different.
In his own way.
Just do a different song.
I wonder how the world would react if those were turtles instead of sharks.
Why does that make a difference?
I just think it does. We don't like amphibians.
Well, we love sharks.
Well, I think those sharks.
Okay.
Well, they were fluffy and
there
cute.
was another Super Bowl commercial that we forgot to mention last week.
Oh, goodness.
Oh, did y'all talk about them without me last week?
Yes. Haven't you listened to last week's podcast?
I'm sorry, I did not.
You never listen to the ones you're not on.
You
never listen to the ones
I'll
you're not on.
have to go back and make up.
We should do a whole podcast without Christian
and
about
make me listen?
Christian.
Oh, no, please don't do that.
A whole podcast about Christian.
Please don't do that.
And then she has to listen to it. Okay, creationists are angry about the Carnival Cruise Super Bowl ad.
Yeah.
Did you hear? Do you remember the Carnival Cruise one?
I not only remember that, I auditioned for that.
Did you really? Were you going to be the John F. Kennedy voice?
JFK?
Oh wait, mine's the Norwegian Cruise Line one. That was the one I auditioned for. But you know what? I liked that one.
Did you notice evolution in it? Did you notice
that we
the
all
evolution
came
in it?
from the sea?
Here, I'll read it for you.
I did.
Can we play the audio?
I really don't know why it is that all of us are so committed to the sea, except I think it's because, in addition to the fact that the sea changes, and the light changes, and ships change, it's because we all came from the sea.
That's more like FDR.
I don't even care.
Not JFK.
We are tied to the ocean. It was an old recording. I'm doing my old recording.
Yeah, but it was a Boston accent.
We are tied.
There are pieces in
Park
there.
the car. And when we go back to the sea, whether it is to sail or to watch it, we are going back from whence we came.
Well, I didn't agree with the theology of it,
itself.
but I did think it was a fantastic commercial.
It was a well done commercial.
It was a well done commercial. And how did they get all those boats into one shot?
That's all computer generated.
And none of them were like bursting into flames or having people vomit off the sides. That was amazing. So obviously, and I noticed it when that went by. It was like, oh, that's a very
and I noticed it too. I thought that is
very
interesting.
Secular perspective that they're just throwing out there. So of course, once again, Ken Ham pops up. He blogs about it.
How would we ever get through the Super Bowl without Ken Ham's commentary?
Did he respond to Katy Perry saying that?
Yeah, he thought that her song was garbage.
But he didn't respond to her comment that God spoke to her.
No, he didn't care about God speaking to her.
Okay.
He just thought that her performance was sensuous and evil, and that the "I Kissed a Girl" song was garbage.
And
I agree with him
Did he have
about
issue
that.
with a shark with feet as a hint to evolution?
Creationist leader Ken Ham was furious with the ad, expressing his rage on his Around the World blog. He accused Carnival of blatantly using evolution in its advertising.
That's sad.
And noted how upset he was that our culture is abandoning the truth of God's word in cruise line advertising. I'm not sure what he wanted from Carnival. I mean, it's an interesting quote from JFK.
Right, and I don't even know if is it scientifically true that the salt content of our blood is the same as the ocean?
Know. Yeah, that stuck
out
to me, too.
It sounds like a wives' tale.
I don't know. Now we have to look it up.
We are all filled with seawater, and we pee seawater, and we are seawater, and I'm going to take a cruise on the seawater because I love it.
evoked an emotional response
JFK.
that made me want to go on a cruise.
Really? It made you want to go on a cruise?
And
Bingo!
that was the point.
Because of the godlessness of cruising?
No.
And the complete rejection of biblical truth?
The cinematography was beautiful.
It was beautiful.
And
cinematography. I love the cinematography of cruising.
Well, no, the images.
Listen, people wanted me to weigh in, right, with my thought about these Super Bowl ads.
Yes,
there were a few where you look at the production value of those and what they accomplished and all of that, and it's amazing to me. And with that one, the cinematography was beautiful, the sound was awesome, and I think the concept of trying to invoke an emotional response to make people say, "Oh my gosh, we should really take a cruise," that's the point of the advertising.
Well, and what the marketing did really well in that is it took the single thing that a cruise can do that no other vacation can do and highlighted it.
Yes.
Right?
Let you vomit in the sea.
No.
Well, they're highlighting the fact that you're out on the ocean,
Yes,
which is
you're
what
on the
distinguishes a cruise from any other land-based kind of resort vacation.
It's beautiful
and that was
relaxing
and it wasn't
inspiring.
I didn't find it offensive. Apparently, Ken Ham did, but
did you notice at the time?
I did
when it went
notice
by?
at the
It's like,
time.
oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Oh,
I did too, and I thought, that's a
Ken
little
Ham's final
misguided.
comment was, except for the fact that it's a spiritual issue because of our sin, it's mind-boggling to think that intelligent people can actually believe life and the whole universe came about by accident. Ludicrous.
But that's not what
That's not what the spot was about at all. Which led the friendly atheist, Hermit Meta, who is in Chicago.
He's the friendly atheist?
He's the friendly. He blogs on Pathos as the friendly atheist.
I didn't do that for Carnival
He
yet.
wrote now it's on like Donkey Kong.
I bet it is.
And he has to respond to Ken Ham because when Ken Ham speaks, then someone has to respond.
Right.
It is indeed mind blowing. Hermit says, but it makes sense after you read up on it. Ken Ham should try it sometimes. Turns out you can learn a lot when your library consists of more than just a single book. You're taking a picture of my dog.
I know, he's finally
my
settled
dog
down.
just passed
Sorry.
out on the floor.
Who knows what he ate?
So, and people were tweeting all over about it. So Carnival Cruise has enough problems without throwing evolution in its ads. We didn't come from the sea, JFK. We came from Adam.
But Adam came from the sea, perhaps, right?
Janet Partial said
So
that.
why are people mad at Carnival, but they're not mad at JFK?
Because Carnival thought it was a good idea to promote evolution so blatantly to try to sell cruises. Wouldn't that just make you say, well, I guess they're not my cruise line? Why would you get mad at them?
Well, the problem is Carnival owns, I think, 50% of all the cruise lines in the world. They own Carnival, Princess, Cunard.
I just don't understand
Seabourn,
why you're expecting
Costa.
an apple to be an orange.
What's the apple in this scenario?
Well,
I like the Adam and Eve's apple? The evil
yes.
apple?
Actually, nowhere in the Genesis is it identified as an apple.
Yeah, I know, but we all know that it was.
You get my
They
point.
just forgot to write it down.
right?
You mean, why do we care?
Well, no, he's basically saying, that this is a church service, or that proper theology ought to come to me from
Right.
a Super Bowl commercial.
This was improper theology, as opposed to all the Budweiser commercials, which have wonderfully biblical theology.
Right. If we're going to talk about something about Super Bowl ads, I think a more relevant and important discussion is the fact that, our emotions and our pocketbooks are trying to be moved on this monumental scale.
Yeah.
And what we do is here we are talking about them on our podcast.
Right.
Here's a bunch of tweets. Emerson Collins said, this Carnival Cruise Line commercial pushing its evolution agenda must not be going over well in the South. Stephen Miller said, so Carnival Cruise Lines just ran an ad during the Super Bowl quoting Kennedy on evolution. Apparently, they're atheists. Nice to know. Dennis Perrin said, Carnival Cruise Lines endorse evolution. See what happens when you get rid of Kathy Lee Gifford?
She was their
used to be their
spokesperson back in the 80s.
She was their spokesperson.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Marty Katie said, did Carnival just endorse evolution using JFK's voice? Jesse Peterson said, so the theory of evolution is now scientific fact, according to Carnival Cruise Lines. People,
I think this is much ado about nothing.
Seriously.
Either take a cruise or don't take a cruise.
Yeah.
Or you can go, who do they not own? So that if we're upset.
I see. I know this because I used to own a travel agency when I was a seminary student.
Did you really?
I started an online travel agency to make money.
I
while
have
was a
never heard of
seminary
that.
student.
he was
How'd
a
it
travel
go?
agent.
It went well. I got a honeymoon out of it.
With your wife?
With my wife.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just checking.
Royal Caribbean,
Royal Caribbean is not owned by Carnival.
not owned by Carnival.
So do you think they're pro-creationist?
Let's say they are.
Okay.
Why not?
Okay.
Why are you even?
I just want to know which cruise line.
Norwegian cruise line is not.
Okay. If we're not happy that JFK believed in evolution, which cruise line should we take?
Royal Caribbean.
You could do Royal Caribbean or Celebrity. You could do Norwegian.
Okay.
But pretty much the entire rest of the world's cruise lines are owned by Carnival.
What about the Ark that Ken Ham is building?
Oh, good question.
Could we take that for a cruise? And then that would be...
If he's building it to spec, I guess you could.
Did the Ark have a rudder, though? It didn't have a rudder. You can't choose a course.
You can't really cruise.
No, you have to just...
It's like a jellyfish cruise.
You have to depend on God to take
Hey, that sounds fun. Maybe you should borrow it.
Okay. Enough about the Super Bowl. I think we're done with the Super Bowl now. Did any of you notice the Carnival Cruise Evolution reference when you saw it wing by for the first time?
We do have fans that are going to wholeheartedly agree.
Yes.
With Ken Ham.
And
I'm sorry that we don't agree with you, but...
So what do you do with the, there's a lot of Christian cruises out there.
Yeah, there's a Duck Dynasty one coming up.
Where, some
Bob and Larry have been on cruises.
Have they?
Yeah.
Some group will lease out the whole ship and fill it with fans, and then it becomes a Christian cruise with Christian celebrities. And
we have to make sure it's
not a Carnival brand. Huh?
It's not an evolutionary cruise, but a creationist cruise.
Right.
It's hard to be a Christian nowadays.
You can't go anywhere.
I know. Like, you can't eat at Carl's Jr. You have to eat at Chick-fil-A. Because Carl's Jr., the commercials are so
too racy?
Sexual. Yeah, the Paris Hilton, the car washing things. So you have to eat at Chick-fil-A. I have to get all my hobby supplies from Hobby Lobby.
Which you do, which is not a problem.
I got to keep hitting my bell, sorry.
I can't get health insurance. I just have to wing it or do one of those Christian coalition health insurance plans.
That's a thing?
Yeah, it's Christian health insurance where you're paying in and then it's a collective.
But you can't get vaccinated either.
No. Well, that's true for the left side too.
That's part of it necessarily.
That's too loud.
And now I can't go on a Carnival cruise. Jesus never told me it was going to be this hard.
Why can't we just go back to the days where you couldn't play cards or go to the movies?
Yeah, that was so much simpler.
It was much easier those days.
And I'm pretty happy not to go to the movies nowadays because they're mostly terrible. Except The Imitation Game. Okay, Skye.
Did you see it?
No.
You still haven't seen The Imitation Game. Where were you last week, Skye?
I was in Washington, D.C.
Why were you in Washington, D.C.? Are you running for office?
No, I'm not.
What other reason is there to go to Washington,
I was there for
DC?
the National Prayer Breakfast, which has garnered so much attention since last week.
Why were you there for the National Prayer Breakfast?
Because I was invited.
By whom?
By a friend.
Oh. Okay, like he bought a table and he wanted you at his table?
No, he had access to tickets. We still have to pay for the tickets. The most expensive quiche I have ever eaten.
I'm sure.
And it was bad. The food's not good there.
Really?
Well,
it's really
hard
not good.
to do good food for that many people.
Yeah,
at
it's
one
like
time.
4,000 people. It's a big.
That's
thing.
crazy. Okay.
He met my dad last week.
I did.
Skye
He was there too.
met Mr. Christian.
Yes, I did.
Were we alike?
What's that?
Were we alike?
Absolutely. I mean, I was kind of creepy. I turned around and I saw you. It was like you were in prosthetic form of an older man.
Goodness.
And
yeah.
And he had more of the.
He is 70 and balding. Thanks, Skye.
Well, hey, I'm 38 and balding. What am I going to say to him?
Anyway,
But
that was
he was
cool.
very friendly and very warm. And it was very nice to meet him. We got a picture together, and I sent it to you.
Okay.
Thank you for that.
Have
So
you
what'd
been
you learn?
before?
The funny thing is, I've been in Washington, I think, twice before during the prayer breakfast, but not at the prayer breakfast.
You didn't have the ticket for the expensive
Right.
quiche.
So many people come in from around the country and around the world for this that a lot of times other groups will have meetings in Washington this week.
People come in from around the world?
Oh, yeah.
yeah.
I think 130
It's a
countries
big deal.
were represented. We had a guy at my
Why?
table who was one of the assistants to the King of Jordan, who was supposed to be there, but had to go back because of the whole burning of his pilot thing.
pilot, and I got to put on a military
Yeah, it's not
uniform
just
and act
for
like
a few
stud.
select
What's
people.
the purpose of the National Prayer Breakfast?
Well,
to pray for our country.
I don't represent the organizers in any way.
I know, but
So
you're
every
more
year,
familiar with it than I am.
this is the 63rd annual, so it's been going on a long time. And every year it's chaired by either the Senate or the House.
Okay.
And it's one Republican and one Democrat. So that's kind of a bipartisan.
So it's bipartisan.
Right. So this year it was two senators.
But are there still Democrats who pray?
Yes.
Okay.
Quite regularly.
All right.
So, one of the things I was talking to one congressman, and one of the things you learn as you get around Washington enough and you actually talk to some of these people is the amount of friendship that exists behind the scenes between Democrats and Republicans, and including Bible studies and prayer meetings that go on
very
every
large.
week. and
bipartisan Bible studies.
Yeah, and genuine
in the House and the Senate also.
And so one congressman was telling me that he lives in a house during the week on Capitol Hill and comes home every weekend, but he lives with 8 other senators and representatives
and it's like
from
Animal
both
House?
Parties. From both parties, but the agreement they have if you live there is that every Tuesday night you have to commit to being there for dinner together, and they all get along really well. But then when they get in front of the cameras or the news media, or whatever, it all becomes
belligerent combatants.
These are the ones run by the fellowship, right? The houses.
Some of them maybe, yeah. But
what is the fellowship?
I don't know entirely.
I can tell you.
It was started by a guy named Doug Coe.
Yeah.
Who's awesome.
Who's in his 90s now, I believe.
Okay.
But
did he start the National Prayer Breakfast?
Yeah, he did.
Yeah.
And he's still alive?
Yes, he
and
is.
It's
He's
been
older.
happening for 65 years?
63 years. Started in the Eisenhower administration.
And he's still alive?
Yeah.
Yes, he's an amazing, amazing man.
And the attitude is we're not going to get into all the doctrine and the divisions and the denomination stuff. It's just we're going to come together around Jesus.
Okay.
And one thing that kind of was striking to me, and my wife Amanda was with me, was truly how Christ-centered the whole thing was.
Really?
Yeah.
So
the Dalai Lama was there.
Well, I got a story about that.
Oh,
so,
sure you do.
I got a story about that. This was like one of the highlights for me of the whole event.
Okay.
So
you and the Dalai Lama in the men's room?
Almost. It was that kind of awkward. So we're in this huge ballroom at the Hollywood Hilton. It's the Washington Hilton. Like 3,500 people in this room, and we're all the way in the back. So we were not a high priority. Although I did notice at the table next to me was Ken Starr.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Mr. Investigator
So
extraordinaire.
apparently he's not a high priority in Washington anymore either.
Yeah.
So we're at the very back table, and my back is facing the back of the room. And there are just Secret Service guys everywhere. Once the president comes into the room, no one's allowed out. Like, you can't go to the bathroom, you can't do anything, which was a problem. So anyway, I'm sitting there enjoying my cardboard quiche, and I feel like the server is hanging over my shoulder, like waiting to pick something up. Whatever. And so finally I look over, and I swear to you, right next to my head, smiling at me like this close, is the Dalai Lama. Wow. Just staring at me.
What?
He thought he had a fellow.
He came in from the back of the room with it, and Richard Gere was with him.
What?
The whole entourage, and he just stopped at our table
to smile at you.
To smile right at me, like this close. And I'm looking, and everyone starts standing up at my table. And I can't because he's right over me, like hovering. And he's just smiling, like this giddy little boy smile. And he says, "Do you like your breakfast?" And I don't know what to say to the Dalai Lama. And I'm like, "Yeah, it's good." I totally lied. And then he says,
lied to the Dalai Lama.
And then he says,
"Wow,
I had mine at 5:30 this morning." And I'm like, "Great, that's great." And I didn't have time to get my phone out, or Amanda's looking at me like, "What?" And he's got the robe, the whole thing.
Yeah.
And then he just giggles and goes off. That was that.
That is so incredibly
Isn't that the
odd.
strangest thing ever?
And did you make eye contact with Richard Gere?
No, I
Like,
didn't.
hey,
But I mean, there's
why
this
are you
whole
so
entourage
special?
of people, and then after the prayer breakfast, when we were walking back to our hotel, we were staying at a different one. There's all these protesters out in front for the Free Tibet movement, and then the anti-Tibet, pro-China movement. They're all out there, and it was like all this for the guy who asked me if I liked my breakfast.
Interesting.
Wow, that's really. And there isn't going to be another Dalai Lama because
he's the last, apparently.
Yes, he's retiring. Right. He's retiring the reincarnated office.
Was he 14 or 15? What is he? 15? 15?
I don't know.
So yeah, that was my and the funny thing is, the day before there was a big event with the Dalai Lama as part of the prayer breakfast, and I knew some friends who were in town for it also, and they had to sneak in. They really wanted to get in to see him, so they snuck into it, and we're making
people snuck in,
and
you were right there with him on your shoulder.
Exactly.
Imagine that.
It was
and
very
you don't
weird.
have a picture. You don't have a picture.
All I have are the witnesses who were at the table with me.
You don't have a picture.
Wow.
I don't
But
have
your
a picture.
wife would attest.
Yes, she would.
To this.
Yes.
Okay.
I wanted to turn around and go,
So
"Hello,
the
Dalai."
Yeah, can I tell you a little bit about?
Yeah, the Fellowship is an evil organization that's conspiring to create a theocracy.
It is
that correct?
It is a non-denominational group
Non-denom.
that was started by Doug Coe.
Yeah.
And
You forgot the evil part and the conspiracy theory.
it is one of the most amazing group of people that I've ever been around. And one of the wonderful things that they've done is they really tried to love. That's what their mission is, to love these people in powerful positions.
And influence them to a right-wing agenda.
Nope. it's to love them, to give them a place of retreat. So I actually got married in one of the fellowship houses in Washington, D.C. They have these big, beautiful.
Was the Dalai Lama there smiling at you?
The Dalai Lama was
In
not
spirit.
there. My dad was there because he's friends with Doug Coe.
Okay.
And there are a lot of, my dad was the Deputy Undersecretary of Agriculture for a while. So men in
Was Doug Coe in the government ever? Or just
not that he was
so.
the director of Young Life. Honestly, in the Washington, D.C. area. And so he just has this incredible gift of mentoring.
Yeah.
In fact, Seth Cohen, who was on our podcast before, he's one of...
he was mentored by
Doug Coe. So Doug takes these men, and he's trained other people to disciple them. And so they have these retreat places, big, beautiful homes all over the D.C., Virginia area. And dignitaries from all over the world come there just for rest and retreat and are ministered to by the Fellowship Foundation people that work there. And it's a very sort of quiet group. There's no publicity. They don't talk about themselves.
I know, it's secret.
It is pretty much a secret group.
No good.
No.
Because they're trying to undermine.
Doug Coe is short for Doug Co-Conspirator.
That is so not true.
That is right. Well, they are mentioned in the Theocracy book I read. They're coming up all the time.
Well, I think it is because they're
secretive.
My understanding is that they have chosen to not get involved in the nitty-gritty and the partisanship and all the fighting. They've flown below the radar because their whole premise is personal relationships that put Jesus at the center.
Yep.
And because they're not flashy and out there and broadcasting who they're hanging out with and what they're doing, there comes this air of secrecy or conspiracy and all that. And so people love that and they latch onto it. But I don't think that's what's going on.
Okay.
And the fact that there are both Democrats.
Why do they buy all these houses?
Well, the fact that they have
As
Democrats
retreat places.
and Republicans who are part of, they host a prayer meeting every week in both the Senate and the House. And I can't say names because it would probably be a breach of confidence, but I think some of our listeners would be shocked if they knew the Democratic senators and congressmen and women who are a part of these prayer meetings who are very committed.
Al Franken and Michelle Bachmann.
It is amazing.
Together.
I mean, you truly would be stunned when you realize. And the reason it works is because it is secretive and quiet and on the down low. And they really protect people's, everything. And so these people in powerful positions feel very safe going to Bible studies together. And so they have an ability to witness and influence and share that most people never get. And they are there for when they fall. You know, I've watched them come alongside a lot of politicians who have had horrible falls from grace. And it doesn't matter whether they're a believer or not. They reach out to them. So
because they want to influence them to a right-wing conspiracy agenda?
I don't think so.
Well, and here's something to consider about the prayer breakfast. So on the program, you never know who's going to be presenting before you go. It's kind of hush-hush. So on the program, it was surprising when I saw King Abdullah from Jordan was going to pray at the prayer breakfast.
Wow.
And he ended up not being there because of all the craziness that happened in Jordan this last week in their fight against ISIS. So I figured, well, maybe he was going to get up and read part of the Quran. He's a Muslim, right? He's from Jordan. And so one of the senators, I forget which one it was, who was co-chairing the event that year, got up and said, normally we would have King Abdullah here right now, but he's not because of what's going on. But I'm going to read the passage of scripture that he said he intended to read before he left Washington. And it was the story of the Good Samaritan from Luke. So here you had King Abdullah was going to be reading a story that Jesus told in the New Testament as a Muslim.
You think he was doing that because he knows this is a predominantly Christian
I don't know.
gathering in a predominantly Christian country?
I have no idea. But the other thing that was very striking to me is I probably met at least 4 or 5 non-American Muslims who were at the prayer gathering who, in one form or another, said to me, I'm a Muslim, but I follow Jesus.
That just gave me chills.
Really?
And heard their stories of where they, and these are people deeply embedded in the Middle East, in countries where it would be impossible for them basically to be a flat out Christian. And there they are. And these are not, country bumpkin people. These are very influential, powerful people in the Middle East.
They can get a seat at the National Prayer Breakfast with the Dalai Lama. Yeah. That's not so. President Obama was there.
Yes, he was.
Every president is always invited to speak at every prayer breakfast, no matter what they do.
And they all have.
And they all have.
you think they feel obligated?
A little bit. So
I think so.
Was
probably
it 2 years
now.
ago, I think, when Ben Carson spoke at the prayer breakfast and had that very political talk, and it got a lot of coverage, and that did not go over well because I think what I heard was Obama was very upset that somebody politicized the event that way.
Right.
And,
Okay. But President Obama was there and made some remarks that got some people a little wound up.
Yes, they did.
A little hot under the collar.
Did you notice them at the time?
Of course, I noticed the remarks. I was in the room, but I didn't find them troubling until I went back to my room and I pulled up the Drudge Report on my phone, and it pulled one little line out of his talk, and everyone went hysterical.
So what was the overall theme of his talk?
So it was multiple things. I mean, he was very funny at first. So the guy who spoke before him, the keynote speaker, I forget his name, Daryl something or other, is a NASCAR driver, commentator.
Oh, right.
Daryl Waltrip?
Daryl
Yes,
Waltrip.
he
He's
was
a
great.
driver.
He was really good. He was very funny. Very humble, but at one point he was talking about how when he was a younger man he was a total jerk, and he started listing all the things that people accused him of when he was a younger man before he'd really.
And he's like, "Yeah, I did that."
What?
Did he like cop to all?
Oh
of those
yeah,
things?
yeah. I mean,
that was
this
me.
is before he came to Christ, and how arrogant he was, and all these terrible things. He started listing them. He was very self-deferential about it. So when the president got up to speak, he said, "Daryl, if that's the worst people have to say about you, you're just a beginner." Because he was commenting on how the horrible press he gets. But he talked about the importance of people being motivated by their faith to do really good things in the world, and he mentioned a lot of them. And then he did mention that we have to be aware that throughout history, people have used their faith to also justify terrible actions.
Right.
And he referenced what's going on in the world right now. And then he made his comment about, before we get on our high horses.
Here, I'll read the comment.
Please do.
Yeah.
So anyway, this is the Washington Post summarizing it.
Which is owned by Sun Yun Moon. No, that was the Times.
As a new president, of course, President Obama has never been one to go easy on America. He dismissed the idea of American exceptionalism early on. He labeled the Bush-era interrogation practices as torture. America, he has suggested, has much to answer given its history in Latin America and the Middle East. And so his latest challenge came Thursday at the National Prayer Breakfast at a time of global anxiety over Islamist terrorism. Obama noted pointedly that his fellow Christians, who make up a vast majority of Americans, should perhaps not be the ones who cast the first stone. And this is Obama talking. Humanity has been grappling with these questions throughout history, he told the group, speaking of the tension between the compassionate and murderous acts religion can inspire. And lest we get on our high horse and think this is unique to some other place, remember that during the Crusades and the Inquisition, people committed terrible deeds in the name of Christ. In our home country, slavery and Jim Crow all too often was justified in the name of Christ. Some Republicans were outraged. Former Virginia Governor Jim Gilmore said, "The president's comments this morning at the prayer breakfast are the most offensive I've ever heard a president make in my lifetime. He has offended every believing Christian in the United States. This goes further to the point that Mr. Obama does not believe in America or the values we all share."
Okay.
Does that seem like a mild overreaction?
Not mild. I would say grossly overreactive.
Well, there's a couple things here that I think.
Break it down for us,
Well,
Skye.
there's a lot of ways to break this down.
Yeah.
First of all, I think it's important to remember that he's not saying anything terribly different than what the previous president said. President Bush regularly said, we're not at war against Islam. This is not about Islam. This is about, evildoers, to use Bush's language. And I think what Obama's trying to do, which is strategically very important, is to take religion out of the equation. Because the thing that these terrorists and nut jobs in ISIS want is for the world to view this as a religious war between Islam and the West.
Right.
So if the president takes the bait and starts fueling
trying
that,
to defang that narrative.
Right, and he's trying
saying, hey, we do nutty things when we go off the rails too.
And especially, you got to remember the politics of what was happening at that prayer breakfast. This is the same day that Jordan launched airstrikes against ISIS. So we have the first significant Muslim ally against ISIS coming to the U.S.'s side and fighting aggressively against this enemy. So for Obama to come out and just denounce Islam in any way is not what we need at this point, because the only way we're going to defeat ISIS is with the help of Muslims.
Right, but the question is, to me, is not should he have denounced Islam? The question is he painting too broad a brush to say this is just like, you want to come up, buddy? Hey,
made it on camera.
This is Buddy.
If you're watching on the video,
he's
Buddy
the
wants
cutest
to say
dog
hi
ever
to you guys. Hi, I'm Buddy the dog, and I'm on the television. Okay, so
do I have to talk to you like this?
Yeah, you do. You have to talk to the dog.
Hey, Buddy.
Talk to the dog.
Buddy is so hilariously cute. I mean, if you're not watching, if you've never watched this podcast, you ought to just watch this little section to see how cute this dog is.
This is the moment when we should ask people to donate money.
Donate money.
Because that dog looks so sad.
Or somebody gets it. He hasn't eaten in weeks. Look, he's so gaunt and hungry. He needs...
You were saying something important.
I was. Yeah.
Okay, this is the second point. That I think this is what's troubling about Obama's remarks is he's opening up a huge can of worms that is very complicated historically and theologically in a setting that doesn't allow for that kind of nuance.
So you're saying that's what that was the reason he probably shouldn't said it.
No, I think there's actually a third reason.
Oh, what's that?
What was the first reason?
Well, the first reason was
the first reason I think
good.
what he was trying to diminish the idea that we're at war with Islam by saying Islam can do good, it can do bad. Christianity can do good, it can do bad, which was politically important given what's happening at the moment.
So he's saying if that was all it is, it wouldn't have been a bad thing to say.
Number two, where he made an error is thinking that you could bring up something like the Inquisition, the Crusades, and slavery, and not go into the nuances, because as much as the Bible is used to justify slavery, the Bible is also used to fuel abolition. Right? So it's very complicated. That was his second piece. The third one, which I think gets at the heart of what people are really reacting to, is most people who are political critics of Obama, especially those who are conservative Christians, don't think he's really Christian.
Mm-hmm. Well, can I just ask why that is?
Because they think if you're a liberal and if you're a Democrat, you can't be a real Christian. Liberal. So
I disagree with that.
Go ask your dad.
I think if he had been a conservative,
I'd be a little scared too.
If those words had come out of a conservative Republican's mouth, who was devoutly Christian, nobody would have cared.
Because then he's us.
Because he's criticizing.
We can critique ourselves. But Obama, because he was born in Kenya and he's a Muslim, if he says something bad about Christianity, then we're all flipping out.
It looks like he's throwing a stone at someone else's house rather than throwing it at his own.
Even though he says we Christians.
Right.
Well, and
because that's the perception.
He claims to be a Christian. He does see himself in that Christian camp.
I know, but we don't.
Well, that's my point. His critics don't.
But conservative Christians.
So when George W. Bush gets up and says something about, this isn't a war against Islam, religion can be used to pervert justifications on and on, no one cares because his credentials as an evangelical are solid. When Obama gets up and says something like that, people flip out about it. And we have to keep in mind that the ones who really made a big deal about it, like the Family Research Council and others, they have a political agenda, and they're trying to raise money. Right, they have a bone to pick.
And they have a base that they have to talk to in order to get that money.
Exactly.
I'm going to pull up a quote from Russell Moore. You know Russell Moore.
I do. Yeah. I actually sat with him at the last breakfast.
I don't know who he is, so can you?
I did.
You sat with Russell Moore at the last...
Who's Russell Moore?
He's the head of the Religious Liberty Council thing for the Southern Baptists.
He is...
Ethics and Religious Liberty Commission.
Hang on. Russell Moore, president of the Southern Baptist Ethics and Religious Liberty Commission. Good
I got it
memory.
right.
You get 5 points. Called Obama's comments about Christianity an unfortunate attempt at a wrong-headed moral comparison. He said, what we need more is a moral framework from the administration and a clear strategy for defeating ISIS. And then he wrapped it up by saying, the last quote in the article in the Washington Post is from Russell Moore, who said, wait, I just went too far, who said, hang on.
Someone wasn't prepared.
I printed this out, but only the first 2 pages are all that printed. Oh, here we go. The evil actions that he mentioned were clearly outside the moral parameters of Christianity itself and were met with overwhelming moral opposition from Christians. That's a questionable thing.
That is a very
to
questionable
say, especially when you're with the Southern Baptist Convention that was formed to defend slavery from the Northern Baptists.
Right.
To say all of us Christians were against slavery.
It was It was clearly.
That's why your denomination was formed.
Yeah, that's.
Why do we say
he has a short memory?
And I don't think there was a strong opposition movement to the Crusades in Europe.
No.
In the Middle Ages.
No, all good Christians were opposed to the Crusades.
Yeah,
no, that's the definition of a good Christian.
It sounds like
at the
we're
time
doing a lot
was
of
to be-
rewriting of history.
Yeah, we are. Now, what you can't do, and this bothers me, even when someone says the Inquisition, the obvious question is which
one?
Which Inquisition you're talking about? The Spanish Inquisition, that's one thing, but there's a gazillion Inquisitions. Anytime the church inquired into a matter, it was an Inquisition. That's what it
Here's what seems to be going on right now. Because there's so much bad press coming out of the Middle East and because of terrorism in Europe and elsewhere, I think some overzealous Christians are very eager to paint with a broad brush and say, see, Islam, violent. Christianity is peaceful.
Yeah.
And sorry, guys, but it's not that simple. I mean, the Christianity, beyond what Obama mentioned, it was used to justify Nazi domination in Germany. It was used...
Yes, but poorly. I mean, you have to. It was pretty easy. If someone, how was Jim Crow defended biblically?
Easily. It was from Noah and the curse on Canaan and the whole dark species.
So anyone with dark skin is cursed because of the curse of
and then you look in both
the curse of Cush.
You look both in the Old and New Testament, and slavery is instituted.
Well, but that's the difference.
And see, there it is. Slaves obey your masters.
Yeah, but that's different. But that wasn't Jim Crow. Jim Crow wasn't about slavery.
But then it
Jim
continued
Crow was
afterwards.
about this race needed to be oppressed.
Yeah, but it was because slavery should never have gone away in the first place.
Really?
Yeah.
Are you sure you're just making that up?
No.
You're just making that up.
Well, it's still based on the premise of slavery.
You grew up in Jim Crow.
I did.
The premise of slavery was that the dark races are inferior, and the same premise for Jim Crow and apartheid and elsewhere.
It was the premise of the African slave trade.
Yeah.
Yes, not the premise of slavery, because
Well, I'm talking about American slavery.
Okay, yes.
Yes. So anyway, my point is, and I think Obama's point, which I think is accurate, is you can look at any religious tradition, Christianity, Islam, Buddhism, Judaism, Hinduism, and you can find some people using those traditions for motivation to do really good.
Right.
And you can find many instances of every one of them being used for political agendas, which are bad. And that's just human religion. That's what happens in sinful hearts.
So what you're saying is we need to get rid of all religion.
Yeah, pretty much.
No, that's not what you're saying, and that is not the answer.
Because that's what a lot of people have concluded.
But a lot of people do say that.
The Richard Dawkins and the Sam Hitchens, the Christopher Hitchens and the Sam Harrises and all those guys would say, yes, religion. Oh, here's a quote. I think it's Christopher Hitchens, but I'm not sure. Evil men will always do evil. For a good man to do evil takes religion.
Yeah. That's interesting.
That's ridiculous.
Okay.
I know, but hey, here's a quote from my book.
Yes.
All human religion is a system of control predicated on fear.
Yes.
And I still believe that.
I agree with that.
Could we put that on a t-shirt?
So let me ask you, here's a question.
Can you say that again for Buddy? Because he didn't quite catch that.
All human religion is a system of control predicated on fear.
Okay.
Okay, so here's my question.
You get that, Buddy?
Would you say, because I've heard some people say this, if you distill each religion down to its essence, and people lived by that, as opposed to the theology or the rules of the religion, would that be okay? Would we live in harmony?
No.
No.
Why not?
Because they're not capable of doing it.
But let's say we were. Let's say we were capable of doing
it. How many hypotheticals are we going to throw in here?
Do you get what I'm asking?
Well, I mean, you could forget other religions. You could just take the Old Testament and say, hey, if people just followed the Ten Commandments and the Mosaic Law, would the world be better? Yeah, it would. But what Scripture shows us is that we're not capable of doing it apart from a change of heart, which comes from
and also the
presence of God.
Some religious traditions. As a goal, those traditions are supposed to be applied to a society, not individually.
Explain that.
Islam is an example. Islam is a way of running society.
Right.
It's not a personal system of conduct. It's a societal system of conduct.
And do they believe it's that way?
Many do, not all.
Most.
Right.
Yeah. So it's more comparable to Old Testament Judaism, which wasn't just, if you're a Jew, here's how you live. No, you're the people of Israel. Here's how you live as a society. So that Christianity is different. Christianity takes it out of the context of a society and creates a trans-society entity called the church. And this is how the church conducts its affairs. This is how people within the church behave, but this is separate from Caesar. This is separate from Rome.
And this is why the Christian tradition, particularly in Europe, led eventually to individual rights and then to democracy. Because there was a sense of, I have a communion with God, and my individual obedience and virtue can be trusted upon to then give me individual rights and a democratic society. So these are all nuances to religious tradition that Obama just simply cannot get into in a 15-minute talk.
And there are some faiths where it's completely personal and completely internal, whether it's Baha'i or something where it's just you're okay, I'm okay, we're all okay. You do what you want to do, I'll do what I want to do. No harm, no foul.
Katy Perry.
Katy Perry.
Katy Perry.
I like that.
Sorry.
Yeah, I was trying to say Katy Perry to somebody, and I said Tyler Perry. And it was like 30 seconds later that I realized it, and it was like 3 college girls at Moody that were asking me a question. And I said, like Tyler Perry. And they just walked away going, I don't even know
look
who
at that old gray-haired guy doesn't know what he's
talking about. Okay, we're all out of time. But we learned a lot, didn't we?
I learned a lot.
We learned...
I don't know that we solved anything.
That it's complicated, and that maybe you shouldn't make overly brief references to the Crusades and Inquisitions without going into it.
I think you can if you're from inside the camp.
And if you're Russell Moore, don't be too quick to say, oh, no, Christians never went for any of that stuff.
Right.
The vast majority of us, not including my own denomination, were completely opposed to slavery. Oh, man, that's a little embarrassing.
And I also think we ought to just let commercials be commercials and not look to them to...
I only want to work with companies that support all of my individual beliefs.
So what we've learned is don't expect good theology from Super Bowl commercials, from Super Bowl halftime performers, or from the President of the United States.
There we go. That summed that up, Phil. There you go. He just did your work for you.
Okay. If you're upset about President Obama, Skye's having breakfast with the Dalai Lama, and he's not paying attention to the stuff that's happening right in front because Katy Perry is riding a lion. Her theology's lousy, but at least she's trying, cause Russell Moore has completely forgotten that his denomination was formed to support slavery. It's a little bit embarrassing, but also kind of true. And I hope he's not swearing at me, cause if you do, then I think that's something else you might have to confess. And, it's been a great show, and so God bless you as you go back to your homes on your little radios and you think, why do I listen to such a ridiculous show? Because we learn a little every week. So give your enemy a kiss on the cheek. And Christian is gonna be pretty meek when she wears fuchsia 2 weeks in a row.
Oh gosh, now I have to wear fuchsia.
See you next time.
Bye.